I'm sure I would have moved to formula by now. I'm like literally leaking and lactating as we're talking about my
Oh,
baby. I am
God.
still, yes, I actually.
From latchkey kids to helicopter parents, join us for a generational showdown. This is You Turned Out Okay with Mrs. B.
Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of You Turned Out Okay. This first episode is entitled Don't Kiss the Baby. And as we get into it today, you'll understand where that came from. So, this podcast is meant to be witty and funny and insightful. No one's an expert. I am not an expert. My guest is not an expert. That is not our intention. Our intention is to have really great intergenerational conversations between your Gen X host, Mrs. B, and her guests, who will usually be millennials, but we might get into it and bring a boomer on. We'll see. You know how Gen Xers generally feel about boomers. But today, I have a very special guest for you. She is my very first daughter-in-law. She is also the origin story, along with my first grandbaby, her son, Theo. And without either one of them, this podcast would not exist. So please join me in welcoming the inspiration for You Turned Out Okay, Emma. Hey, Emma.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah. All right, let's get started. So let me ask you, do you remember the moment when I first told you I wanted to start a podcast about parenting and grandparenting?
Yes, I think you had posted it in our one of our gajillion family group chats that we have.
Okay. So what was your first reaction?
I knew that you can do anything that you put your mind to, so I was just waiting for kind of like the end result, which we're here now, which is incredible and inspiring. Because you always pull things together in like a unreal timeline that I could never fathom. Um,
Yeah, well, it's for the audience, so everybody knows. Emma is my daughter-in-law. She is married to my oldest son, Max. So, and she is the first daughter-in-law to have a baby. So she is the mom of our very first grandson, Theo. And Theo and Emma are really the inspiration for this podcast. And what we're hoping is that by us having conversations, me and my daughter in laws, or me and other millennial moms, new moms, or Gen X grandparents or boomer grandparents, we can all come to a better understanding of what it's like to raise children from different points of view. So that's kind of the inspiration for what we're doing right here. It's the conversations we've been having since Theo was born and all my daughter-in-laws started to come into my life. So, Emma, why do you think right now is a good time to kind of have these intergenerational conversations?
well, to help out my brother and sister-in-laws, I'm starting we're doing like the roadmap
Right.
of integrating multi generations within our families. I also think that it's hard to have these conversations after the fact, after people have gotten under each other's skin, after situations that have been uncomfortable or very comfortable have happened. And, I'm an oversharer and overtalker. And so I think that it's also helped our relationship grow. And I think now I can be like mother to mother with you. I think that has also helped like my motherhood grow, and hopefully your motherhood as you mother like your sons as they're older and then you grandparent. But I think that it's just helped make sure all of the environments that I'm bringing my baby around, your grandson around, are ones where everyone can feel relaxed And it took a hot second to do
Right,
that,
right.
particularly maybe more on my part than on your guys's part, but it's scary when you're bringing a new life into this world and you're trying to navigate parent relationships, in-law relationships, sibling relationships, I don't know where the dogs went, dog relationships,
Right.
and so I think that it just having these conversations just helps everybody be able to relax, when the pressure's on.
Well, it's funny that you said that. My next question for you was, how did becoming a mom shift the way you saw me, not just as Rachel,
Mm,
but as grandma, right? So it's interesting as a parent, as a Gen Xer, I was raised a particular way, right? Then you're raising your children a particular way. And each different phase that they go into, the relationship needs to change and evolve.
yeah,
And this, you all being married and all having partners, that's one thing. But all of a sudden, what I tell everybody is once, you become a grandparent, that family unit that we had is the eight of us, right? The three boys and the three girls. Each one of those individual family units has to become that couple's priority, right? So you have to, the boundaries, you have to be okay with the boundaries that are being set. And that's kind of what we want to talk about, right? I mean, when you're a parent, yes, when they're little, there really are no boundaries. They are you, you are them. And as they grow, then they start to become their own people and they start to fight for their independence and their boundaries.
yeah,
But to me, when your children become parents and you become a grandparent, that's when the boundaries really come into play because they have a priority other than the greater family at large. And I think that's where the conflict can come in. And not only are you navigating that relationship with your in laws, you're navigating that same relationship with your parents, right? And in our instance, again, different grandparents from different generations, so different experiences.
yeah,
So, you not
yeah.
only have to navigate the Gen X parents, you've got to navigate boomer parents too, right?
Right,
So,
right, and, like, immigrant parents, my
yeah,
father's an immigrant, and
right.
so cultural differences as well.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, our families are different in culturally how we approach things and different generationally. So,
Yeah.
for you and Max, it's not just talking to us, it's, your parents, same thing. So, is there anything that surprised you about my approach to grandparenting as a Gen Xer versus, maybe what you thought it would be like, or,
Yeah.
we keep talking about how we were raised kind of feral with not a lot of oversight and very independent and all of that. So, is there anything in my approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your like, the first part of your question with, like, how's maybe my view of you changed? I think it's also, like, with my mom as well, but you have a different appreciation for your mothers around you, those who mother is a large term. You can be a mother without, having birthed your own kid, but, you raised 3 exceptional humans back to back to back to back. So I think if anything, it's made me admire you more and um feel like I can relate to you more now,
Right,
I think,
right.
like, and that's really awesome. Again, this like generational divide, but now we have something. I keep saying like motherhood is the most intense cult I've ever been a part of. And I
Right.
really think that that's so true. Like being a mother and then having that in common with your mother-in-law or your mother puts us all on like a totally different playing with each other now. And I think in terms of things that have been, like, interesting in the way that you grandmother or mother, I think that was the second part of the question
Right,
was
right,
that.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
was about
Um,
grandmothering, yeah.
yeah, I think you're intuitive in a way that I'm not, because it takes you don't have the pressure on you to like learn something new or be figuring it out as you go. I think you already have that experience. So
Right.
you act in a calmer, more collected way and do things a little bit more relaxed than I do because which is nice to see. I wish I could be that way.
Well, and I think that comes from, look, your husband is the oldest of 3 boys. I raised 3 boys, 5 years apart. With 3 boys, every mother of boys says you're lucky they all survive, right? So that's part of it. And obviously when you're a new parent, everything seems, like it's big, right? And then as you raise them and everything turns out fine, you realize you really were sweating the small stuff. And, in the end, you turn out okay, right? Which is where the title of the
Yes.
podcast came from, right?
Right,
Because
right.
no matter what differences or mistakes, in the end, you turned out okay. So,
Yeah.
that origin really comes from us having those conversations. So, is there anything, that parenting wise that I suggested that at first you completely rolled your eyes? And then maybe we're like, okay, but I see that now.
Um, ooh. I'm gonna go with yes as the default answer. Um, I'm trying to think of specifics. I mean, even, things like food, things like fussing it out, stuff like that. No
Right.
one likes to hear their baby fussing. I do agree with you and I'm trying to get used to this in terms of like it's important for them to be independent. Granted, he's 10 months old. He can only be so independent, but it's still good to like build kind of their understanding that they're not going to be able to just latch onto my boob at any moment in time he so desires,
Right,
and
right,
he
right.
will be fine and he will be okay.
Yep,
um in the beginning, reminding me to make sure I'm taking time for myself. I think that hits even harder now at 10 months
yep,
when I am in the thick of things and it's really hard to find time for myself. And I think like your persistence in just letting go and like physically removing myself from spaces to get that rest is really important.
right.
And I'm beginning to internalize that a little bit more and realize that now. But I definitely think in the beginning, I didn't want to leave my baby for that long. I
Right,
didn't trust I could
right.
leave my baby for that long, not because I'm not leaving him with trustworthy people, but
Mhm.
because I just personally have this like visceral need to I'm a Scorpio. I love control. I call myself a reformed Scorpio because I am a friendly aggressive Scorpio, but I have no ounce of chill in my body.
Right.
So letting go is hard. Finding time for myself is hard. And I definitely think I'm beginning to internalize that more and realize um, how important that is.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. The other thing I will say that, when you're getting advice from grandparents, we remember, but we remember in generalities, right? So
Mm,
I think that's the way nature intended it with motherhood, that you don't always necessarily remember all the hard times, right? So some of the
yeah.
advice is based on, well, you turned out okay. We did this and you turned out okay. But we don't always necessarily remember what led up to that decision, or why we decided to do it that way. So,
Yeah.
there is a little bit of that going on too. So what are the things, that I think was a big part of the inspiration for this podcast, and the reason why this episode is titled Don't Kiss the Baby, is because it was the first moment that I realized, oh, this our world is different now. And I have to give a shout out to one of my dear friends, Sarah. When I first told her that you and Max were going to have a baby, she's a couple years older than me and she's a little farther ahead in the process. And she said to me in her very Sarah type way, "Oh, just wait till you get weird. They're gonna get weird." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I love her children, her girls. She's like, "Oh no, they get weird." So that was always in the back of my mind, So when Theo was born, the first thing you want to do is like snuggle and kiss the baby, right? And it was a big like, no. And do you remember telling us, "Don't kiss the baby"?
Yes, I particularly remember telling your husband.
Right.
I'm sure he will make an appearance on this podcast at some point, but um, I love my father-in-law and we have a very special relationship, but my father-in-law can be very stubborn and quick to do things,
Yes, that's true.
including kiss my
Impulsive.
baby, and yes, impulsive. And so I think I started off probably with a like, "Oh, like, no, like, by the way, we're not gonna, like, kiss the baby,"
Right.
which was met with, "Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. No, no, please don't kiss my baby." It
Oh,
took a couple months to
to let it sink in,
get
right.
that
So,
lesson in
all
for
right.
both sets of parents.
Okay. So before you gave birth to Theo, were you like, "Okay, nobody's kissing the baby"? Like, where did that come from?
My slight germophobia. Um, I think having a baby born in the height of RSV flu season, he was
Mm,
born in December. So worried about him getting sick. He was a NICU baby, for the first 5 days. I've always been protective over my firstborn, my dog child. But like in general, being a former educator, K-12 educator, you see how fast kids can get sick. You see how
right.
fast things can spread. And knowing how fragile a human child is, I just wanted there to be no chance that anyone, and also not only don't kiss the baby, but there were only my parents and you guys, and I guess Max's grandparents who could not be masked for the first,
Right.
I mean, handful of months. People were
Right.
coming in, even siblings. You had to be N95, KN95 masked up. And that too was even like a little contentious. But yes, I was very firm prior to giving birth. Nobody's kissing my baby. And funny enough, it's really the fathers that I have had to
Right.
continue
Right.
reminding this
Right.
about, because the mothers have internalized, whether you guys agree with it or not, "Do not kiss my baby." I do not have the same trouble as
Well,
getting my
right.
father-in-law and my father. They're like, "But the baby's so cute." Like, "Yes, I know. Thank you."
I have to tell you that your parents were here a couple weeks ago. We this family have Sunday dinners and football Sundays in particular in the fall, and your parents were here, and the first thing your dad did when he walked in the house was like kiss Theo. And I thought to myself, "Aha, they're allowed to kiss him, but I'm not allowed to kiss him." But then you like went
No.
all over your dad, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so it
Yes.
is an equal rule."
Yes, yes. Yes, it is an equal rule that is not respected by all, but I will continue to be a ferocious, ferocious mother, when it comes to kissing my baby.
Did you think that it was gonna be so hard to set boundaries with I mean, look, we've got a lot of grandparents, right? Theo's got great-grandparents, 3 of them, and he's got a great-great-grandmother, so there's a lot of generations. I mean, when you think about it, we've got everything covered from,
Yeah,
at the top with my 100-year-old grandmother, the
yeah,
the greatest generation. So when you think about it, you've got 5 generations there, all these grandparents and all these boundaries that didn't used to really exist. Like,
yeah.
did you think about what it would be like to communicate those boundaries, or were you just like, "I'm doing it and they'll get in line"?
I think a little bit of both. I think coming from a small family, my background, I'm half Chinese. My dad's entire side is in China. My mom's is kind of spread across the US, but our family unit has always really been the four of us. Your family unit is much larger. And so I think when I married into your family, I began to learn setting my own boundaries. Again, like you said, kind of when you get married, you start to have a different family unit than your original family unit. And then when you have
Right.
like a human baby, you have to really wall it off, separate. This is
Yep.
my
Yep.
family now. It's not our families, our thing, like this is our unit. And so I think I got a little bit of practice in boundaries getting married and marrying into a family. And similarly, my husband marrying into mine. But e- the baby thing is a whole nother story
Right.
because there are so many private conversations that you have with your partner that you don't share with your parents.
Right.
And so there are so many boundaries that you agree on together that then have to verbally get spread out to everybody or not. And so keeping people up to date with new boundaries, throwing out old boundaries. I'm really lucky that you guys are such an open family. I mean, we're literally having a podcast, sharing
Right.
potentially with the world
Exactly.
some of our
Right.
quarrels
Yeah.
and and like for those out there, like there have been deep arguments. Like this is not
Right.
something where we just gloss it over and laugh at, there have been really hard conversations or not even conversations. There have been really hard boundaries set. This is not a conversation. This is
Right.
what I'm telling you. And I think that is really hard and an unexpected complication that comes with parenting.
When you think about when we were younger, when we go back to like kissing the baby, right? It was just a sign of love. It was just what you would. I
Yeah.
can't tell you the urge to snuggle with a baby when you're older. So it's so hard not to. I know I struggle with it. My mother in law struggles with it. Like it's so instinctive for
And this
us.
baby, you guys,
And right, he's
this baby
beautiful.
is so cute. It's,
Now, I will say you will never see him because he's not allowed on social media, but that's another episode. We'll get to that one. That's another
Yes.
episode. Don't post the baby. That's what that one's going to be called.
Yeah.
I guess we know more than we used to know. And I think that's part of these conversations too. Like, we wear that badge very proudly as Gen Xers. We drank hose water, something fell in the dirt, we ate it. A little dirt's never good. Right. But look, your generation was completely shaped by a global pandemic, right? So we
Yeah.
just know more about germs. And you guys, up and coming parents, the young millennials or even the Gen Zs, the pandemic hit at a very critical point in your life where understanding germs and how they spread and what can happen was very, very different from growing up in the 60s, 70s, 80s,
Yeah.
90s, or even pre pandemic, right? And I think that's part of
Yeah.
these conversations that I want to make sure that we always touch on. It's about sharing point of view, but that point of view comes with a point of view, meaning where are you standing, right? So
Yeah.
standing as a Gen
Lived
X, it's like,
experience.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and I think that's harder than others, as you would say. That's definitely harder for my husband to really understand that there's different perspectives because there's different lived experiences, you know?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things like you worry about different things as a millennial because of your lived experience than I worried about when I was a new parent, just by the
Right.
nature of
Right.
things, right?
Right.
So, do you think if you were raising a baby in the 80s or 90s, like when you grew up,
Oh.
do you think it would be different? Pretend
Uh
you don't know nearly as much
yeah.
as you do.
Yeah, heck yeah. First of all, I'm sure I would have moved to formula by now. I'm like literally leaking and lactating as we're talking about my
Oh,
baby. I am
God.
still, yes, I am still breastfeeding at 10 months. And, breastfeeding wasn't what it is now, where
Right.
there's such an insane pressure. And I'm really privileged to be able to still provide, be able to still be exclusively breastfeeding my baby. But I really think that I probably wouldn't have taken this route if it had been back then and everybody else was, you know, formula feeding and just
Right.
jumping right into that. I think I would have had lot of an easier, I think up until I got pregnant and was starting to talk to one of the only other friends that I had who had just had a baby, realizing, oh, it's an option to formula feed. Like
Right.
now it's kind of like you gotta push through and breastfeed.
Right.
But it's an option to not. And I think that that was a lot more, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but that was a lot more um like leaned on and taught and
Well,
just kind of like an obvious thing,
yeah.
like give them some formula than it
Right.
is now where people are so hyper fixated on breastfeeding.
Right. I agree with you. Like we joke, my mother-in-law never breastfed. It was not happening. She was just not doing it. By the time the Gen X generation, we knew it was better for the baby. So if you could do it, you would do it. But they said 3 months, if you can get to 3 months, you're doing great. 6 months is even better. But there was always a switch off. The kids were both. It was breast milk, it was bottle feeding, formula, not a problem. Always had like a bottle with formula that we could give them. So, yeah, again, it's point of view, right? And it's the world we live in kind of driving these decisions. And it is
Yeah.
definitely changed generation to generation. It's like, and it is kind of fun having all of these generations in our lives because you
Yeah.
really get on a regular basis to see the difference, between what I
Yes.
did versus what my mother did versus what my mother-in-law did versus what my grandmother did. Like it's
Yeah.
very different. So it's fun. So let me ask you, what's harder, setting boundaries with your parents or your in-laws?
That's a great question.
Who's the
Oh
worst?
man, I
I
think
think I know. It's one of the dads. I know it is. It's gotta be.
oh, I don't want to hurt any feelings.
You're not hurting feelings. Who is it? Give it up.
I think your husband, because he takes it personally. He
Right,
takes
right.
my boundaries very personally.
That's true.
Um, and I think that it is really important as a grandparent to not take your child or your child's partner's parenting boundaries personally because
Right.
it's not about you. And I
Yep.
think that that might be one of the harder things. And I'm really grateful that I have great parents and in-laws that do, for the most part, respect my boundaries if I set them, whether it's personal or for my baby. But I think it's really hard in general, again, being a child, setting boundaries for your parents.
Right.
Because that's just like a total
It's a
role
reverse.
swap.
Right.
And I
And I
think that no,
Yeah,
go
I
for
and
it.
I think that's what's hard for the grandparents. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, you're setting boundaries, whereas
Right,
for the
right.
30 years, we've been setting the boundaries on you, right?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Correct.
yeah. So do you worry that Pete pushes back or that his feelings get hurt?
I think it's
Yeah.
more, will he do it if I'm not there?
Okay. Well,
Can I trust that although you're bothered by my boundary, will you respect my boundary?
yeah. So when your dad entered after not seeing Theo, my house, the first thing he did was go to kiss that baby. So do
Yeah.
you think that he's kissing Theo when you're not looking?
Oh, heck yeah. I think I think we and it I think that he's worked on it to where now we're kissing the back of the hand,
Okay.
you
Okay.
know? I know my dad is maybe
Well,
kissing the back of the head,
yeah, I
but
gotta
I try to
yeah,
remind him if you are, and I again, like you said, I mean, this baby is the cutest thing
and he is.
ever. You just wanna, swoosh
He
him.
and he's totally your father's bestie, so, like, I see
Yeah.
it. Yeah, he's his best friend. Yeah.
So if anything, right, like I set a boundary I would really like for everyone to keep, but I think there are also ways in which I can, as the baby gets older, I mean, even you asked me, like, what age will you be okay with us, like, giving him a kiss? And, I still have to think about that, maybe once he's really, like, fully vaccinated with all his vaccines and
Right.
things. I don't think I'll ever be cool with someone really, like, kissing my baby's mouth other than myself or my husband, and even then,
Right.
I don't do it that often. But, okay, how about just not a limb or skin that is gonna go into this baby's mouth? So I still have to remind my dad, just not the hand. What about a shoulder? What about a knee, But, like, why do we have to go for these, like,
Right, right. Can we kiss
parts that are gonna stick into his mouth, you
can
know?
we kiss his feet? Can we kiss his feet?
He sticks his feet in his mouth.
Oh, that's true, he's a baby.
Okay.
Right.
So, yeah, I think, no. Do I trust that my dad's not doing I'm not there, no. But do I trust that both my father and my father-in-law do not wanna do anything to get this baby sick, do not
Yeah.
want to do anything to make me upset? Yes. And they just have to work on their self-control. But that is men that I'm learning, Rachel,
Yep. Okay. All right. So let me ask you a question. Given our different styles of parenting, right? Like, obviously, how we parented, my husband and I, as Gen Xers, different than you. Is there something that you're hoping, because our style is different, that Theo will get from us? Like, is there part of it that, even though it's different
Mm,
from your approach, that you go, okay, that'll be cool that he kind of has that influence?
yeah. I mean, I'm so lucky that your family is so different from mine. Like, you guys parented your kids in different ways than my parents parented us. So I think, and I'm parenting differently than all of you. And
Right.
Max is as well. So I think just being um essentially parented or grandparented by other adults in different ways, I think will hopefully allow him to, like, listen and learn and adjust to different people, because I think kids can structure is really, really good for kids, but I
Right.
also think having a lack of structure or changing that structure can be really difficult for kids to adjust to. So hopefully all of us kind of having such different styles will allow him to adapt more quickly in environments, because he can clock in to different ways of reprimanding or finding joy.
Right.
My dad's a very chill, every morning that he gets to spend time with the baby, he's quietly walking the baby around the backyard and quietly
Right.
talking to him. In your guys' house it's a lot more boisterous. It's a little
Right.
bit
Right.
different in the more
Yeah.
in the mornings. There's music going on, there's like huge breakfast scenes, and so I think, like, it's getting to experience life differently than I would be able to give it to him. And so I think um I'm very blessed that we're not the same and that we do things so
Right.
differently, because I think it will give him the opportunity to see life in so many different ways, and also just be able to hopefully relax and many different types of environments because he's going to get that as a kid so often, but still feeling safe and still feeling comfortable. But doing a lot of different things in a lot of different ways with a lot of different people.
Right, right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, okay, one last question. So,
Yeah.
do you think these conversations between grandparents and younger parents will actually help us as a family and help others out there? Or you think it's just going to give us really good material for a podcast?
Oh, I think it's gonna give us really good material for a podcast, but I do think it will be really helpful. I think families are really different, partners are really different. Um, being a woman, being a birthing person, being a mom, being, like, we show up as so many different versions of ourselves. We're not just kind of like a singular being once, especially once you become a mother. And so I
Right,
think that um it's really important to have these conversations with the people around you because I'm a different person
yeah,
now. Like literally I said it was just like a total mind, body, soul change. Like yes, I'm inherently the the same person, but
right,
like the way that I operate in so many respects is so different. And so I think too, like you guys have to get to know me
right,
in a whole new way. My
right,
parents have to get to know me in a whole new way. I have to get to know me in a whole new way. So I
right.
think that not only
Yep,
will it make good content for a podcast, but I think it's like hopefully it will allow or make people think a little bit differently about their partner who just had a baby, their granddaughter, their, granddaughter-in-law, their, daughter-in-law, things like that, will be able to spark conversation and also not even just conversation, but I think there's a lot of like internal learning and unlearning that everybody can participate in to be
right.
best for this tiny human that we're bringing into the world,
Yep,
because we're all trying to support each other. And at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing to remember is that it's not about any of us anymore.
right.
And that's the
Yep,
hardest thing to remember. It's about this baby and it's about learning this new mother that or parent, not everybody has a mother, like in the, societal idea of like
right,
normative idea of what a mother is. And so getting to know the person who's, connected to this child in this way that you aren't in a different way and trying to help each other be the best for this new teeny tiny human who we all just want to grow and thrive. And in order to do that, it really takes, like it takes a village is like, I understand that so differently now
right,
as I'm building my village, but you have to for me to feel the most supported, to be able to let go, to be able to relax, to be able to reconnect with who I am now, this new person that I am now,
mhm,
it takes all the people in your community and that village also like readjusting themselves, relearning, unlearning in order to help you help this your tiny child. So I think
right,
this will give a lot of good podcast content, but hopefully spark conversations or internal dialogue
right,
with grandparents, parents, friends who see this happening to their
right.
friends,
Yep,
parents, or their, in-law, all of this. So hopefully it will um, just like build a safe space within your own communities to, you know,
yep.
be a little bit ruthless in your love and in your mothering to make sure that, you feel supported.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Emma, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me today.
Thanks for
You
having
know,
me.
the podcast wouldn't exist without you and without my firstborn grandson, Theo. So, and, I appreciate everything you are as a mom. You're an amazing mom. And I do think these conversations are critical, which is why we are launching this podcast. We are going to try to do one twice a month, different topics. We'll have different guests, but the whole idea is really we want to have these conversations. So hopefully you, our audience, learns a little bit from us, can approach your families in a little different way, learns about different points of view. Um, we'll make holiday dinners that much calmer, easier.
Yeah.
So that's really our hope. And hopefully along the way we'll have some good laughs and some aha moments and, but it'll be a fun ride. It's going to be a great ride. And I really want to thank you for coming on today. And
Yeah.
definitely let me know when I can kiss the baby.
I will. Thank you for
All
having
right.
me.
All right. Thank you, Emma.